This is very exciting, but also a little bit depressing because it's not going to pass the Senate. House and Senate Democrats have introduced legislation to make Washington, D.C. a state, the 51st state of the United States. This is something we've been talking about for months and months. The measure was reintroduced in the House by a delegate, Eleanor Holmes Norton. She's a Democrat who represents the District of Columbia. And the Senate version was introduced by Senator Tom Carper from Delaware. As of Tuesday evening, Norton says she has more than 200 co-sponsors in the House, but it appears as though there is no chance whatsoever that this is going to pass in the Senate. Democrats control the Senate with the 50-50 split and Kamala Harris as a tie-breaking vote. But Democrats would need to overcome a filibuster on this issue, which requires 60 votes. This is not something you can pass via budget reconciliation, meaning Democrats need to find 10 Republicans willing to vote yes, Washington, D.C. should be a state. Republican lawmakers for a long time have opposed Washington, D.C. statehood, as you and I have talked about before. Representation in Washington, D.C. would likely be overwhelmingly Democratic, meaning 2 additional Democratic senators. And that is not something that Republicans want to see. Now, of course, the reality is that on the merits, this makes obvious sense. Even by Republican so-called values, if the Republican Party were actually principled, this should be a unanimous vote in favor of Washington, D.C. being a state. Washington, D.C. is being taxed without representation. Big government is ruling over these Washington, D.C. folks without them having a voice. If this were Utah that didn't have 2 senators, Republicans would have voted, I don't know, decades ago and said, oh, Utah absolutely must have 2 senators. But the difference is Utah's very red and Washington, D.C. is very blue. But if the principle here is that people deserve representation, you're paying taxes. Why do some taxpayers get Senate representation and other taxpayers do not? It is because they know who lives in Washington, D.C., and they know how Washington, D.C. would vote. And so it's not really about principles or democracy anymore. If you are an American, you should have at least 1 member of the House representing you and 2 senators. How is this even a debate? Well, it's a debate because of the false claims of values and principles when it's convenient to them for Republicans, and abandoning those same principles when it no longer is convenient. Washington, D.C. has more than 100,000 more people living in it than the entire state of Wyoming. OK, if Washington, D.C. was a state, they would have their own National Guard. They could have responded on January 6th without having to depend on all of these other players to say, fine, we're going to send National Guard. Washington, D.C. is the 20th largest city in the United States. That's not even the D.C. metro. That's Washington, D.C. itself. They pay federal taxes. They pay local they pay all sorts of taxes, but they have no senators. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I hope that Joe Biden will actually make this an issue. There have been questions about how much of an issue is this going to be for the Biden-Harris administration. The people of Washington, D.C. deserve to be represented just as much as the people of other states. We know why Republicans aren't for it. It is not for any principle other than the principle of we are hypocrites and just do things that favor our party. That's the only principle that Republicans are abiding by and adhering to when they say, yeah, we don't think Washington, D.C. should be a state. Now, we've talked also about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, I believe both D.C. and Puerto Rico should be states, if Puerto Rico wants to be a state, of course. The difference is politically, and again, for me, it's the principle, so I don't care about this. It's less clear that Puerto Rico would probably not be unanimously Democratic in its representation. There's a larger conservative contingent in Puerto Rico. I would expect that there would probably be at least 1 member of the House that is a Republican that would win in Puerto Rico. Senate, I don't know. But the principle here makes me come to no other conclusion than D.C. should be a state. Puerto Rico should be a state. Now, I know people will say, well, what about American Samoa? What about Guam? OK, we're dealing with Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. right now. Send me your thoughts about this. What could convince 10 Republicans in the Senate to say, yeah, I will vote for DC statehood? Let me know your thoughts. We'll have continued coverage of this on our Instagram page at David Pakman Show. And you can follow me on Instagram as well at david.pakman. One of our sponsors is a free mobile game called Word Forest, which I've been having a great time playing on my phone. There are not a lot of mobile games that I actually am into, but Word Forest is one I actually enjoy because I feel like it's helping me keep my mind sharp. We need that right now. It's a word game where you connect letters in any direction to form hidden word matches with over 2,000 levels. You will never get bored of playing. It was really simple to learn how to play because it starts out easy, but I've been loving how it gets more difficult as I progress. But I find that the whole experience is just relaxing. It doesn't have to be super fast paced. It's awesome for anyone who loves word games and has a good vocabulary or wants to improve it. Go ahead and put yourself to the test. It's free. Just go to the Apple or Google store and search for Word Forest.